Well, the lawyers at Amnesty International have been collecting witness statements and weighing the evidence on the well-reported case of the people smuggling boat turned back off Indonesia in mid-May. They've spoken to the passengers and reckon that the amount of cash paid by Australian officials was $32,000 US. Now, Amnesty's conclusion is that their actions breached international conventions on transnational crimes. The government has certain denials about certain officers and their involvement in this, but it's never denied that payments were made. We're about to see how the immigration and foreign ministers are responding to the Amnesty report. But first, a reminder of how all this evolved in June and how it turned out that Labor and coalition governments had both used the overseas spy agency ASIS to run what's called disruption activities against people smugglers.
We have turned back boats and returned people to where they came from.
The 65 asylum seekers on board washed up on a reef near Rote and have been telling Indonesian police and the media the Australians who turned them back handed out wads of cash to the 6 crew.
Our chief captain just took money from the officers and put down his pocket.
If we're paying them, bribing them to turn back the boats, I mean, that's almost a crime.
Has taxpayer money, Australian taxpayer money, been paid by the Abbott government to criminal people smugglers or not?
The only question that matters is this government prepared to do what's necessary to keep the boats stopped? The answer is yes.
Australian taxpayers have a right to know where their money is spent.
What sort of a pull factor is it when people smugglers know that if they encounter the Australian Navy, they are a chance to receive an Australian taxpayer-funded cheque?
We will do whatever it takes within the law, and to meet our international obligations to stop these people smugglers.
What are we becoming here? You know, we've got talk about it being legal, but is it ethical?
A career with ASIS.
Australia's overseas spy agency could lawfully be asked to make payments, and its offshore covert disruption was going on when Labor was in power.
We're asked to do things other arms of government cannot do.
I would be very careful to rule in anything or rule out anything under Labor's watch.
Where does it leave you with Amnesty International?
Well, Ray, look, lots of these groups have been against John Howard, they've been against Tony Abbott, they're now against Malcolm Turnbull. They don't like Operation Sovereign Borders. They try and attack the Border Force staff and the naval staff, and I think it's a disgrace. I think in the end you can take the word of the people smugglers or you can take the word of our staff at Australian Border Force, and people will make their own judgments. Amnesty International and others don't like Operation Sovereign Borders and the fact that we've stopped boats, but we are not going to stop our resolve. We went to the last election saying that we would stop the boats, stop them, we have, and we're not going to be bullied into some watering down of that because people drown at sea and our detention centres filled. We're just not going to return to those crazy days.
Have Australian officials committed transnational crimes by paying people smugglers to turn back boats?
Our Australian officials operate in accordance with domestic Australian law and in accordance with our international obligations.
So what's your reaction to the Amnesty International report?
I reject it.
On what grounds?
Australian officials are acting in accordance with Australian domestic law and in accordance with Australia's international obligations.